The Zerathi Imperial cruiser burned against Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull screaming as it tore through the sky over the Nebraska plains. William had been checking fence lines when the vessel crashed 3 miles from his farm, sending up a pillar of black smoke that stained the twilight sky. He didn't think, he just ran. By the time he reached the crash site, flames were consuming the wreckage. The ship, if it could be called that, was unlike anything he'd seen even in news feeds about the alien delegation. The Zerathi had arrived 6 months ago, their empire spanning 1,000 worlds, their technology millennia beyond humanity's. They'd come not as conquerors but as observers, curious about the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel. William stumbled through twisted metal, the heat searing his face. Then he heard a cry, weak and desperate, cutting through the roar of flames, that she was trapped beneath a collapsed beam, her lavender skin streaked with ash, her large amber eyes wide with terror. The alien girl couldn't have been more than 16 in human years. Her elegant robes, marked with insignias William didn't recognize, were catching fire. "Hold on," William shouted, though he had no idea if she understood English. He grabbed the beam. It was hot enough to blister his palms instantly, but he pulled. His muscles screamed, his vision blurred, but he pulled harder. The metal shifted an inch, then another. The girl scrambled backward, and William dragged her away from the inferno just as the ship's core exploded behind them. They collapsed in the grass 50 yards away, both gasping. William's hands were ruined, the skin blackened and peeling. The girl stared at him with those enormous eyes, then at his hands, then back at his face. "Why?" she whispered in perfect, accented English. "Why would you? You don't even know me." William managed a pained smile. "Doesn't matter. You needed help." Her name was Daisy, a human approximation of her Zerathi name that she'd adopted during her time studying Earth culture. As the daughter of the Zerathi High Chancellor, she'd been on a diplomatic tour when her cruiser's systems failed catastrophically. Within hours, Zerathi warships appeared in orbit. Within a day, the High Chancellor himself stood in William's hospital room as medics treated his burns with advanced Zerathi technology that would have seemed like magic a year ago. The Chancellor was a towering figure, his ceremonial armor gleaming with the light of 1,000 conquered suns. His entourage filled the hallway: generals, diplomats, warriors whose very presence made the air feel heavy. He knelt beside William's bed. The gesture sent shockwaves through both species. Zerathi nobility never knelt, not to others, certainly not to aliens from a backwater world, barely capable of reaching their own moon a century ago. "You saved my daughter's life," the Chancellor said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had commanded fleets across galaxies. "You asked nothing, expected nothing. Your world had nothing we wanted, nothing we needed. Yet you gave everything you had, your safety, your health, your very flesh for a stranger." William, still groggy from pain medication, shrugged awkwardly. It was the right thing to do. The Chancellor's expression shifted, something between awe and confusion. "The right thing," he repeated slowly. "In the 1,000 worlds of our empire, such a concept has different meanings: power, honor, duty. But what you displayed," he gestured to the burns that covered William's arms, "this is something else." Daisy stepped forward from behind her father, her eyes still haunted but her voice steady. "It's called compassion," she said quietly. "I've been studying it. It's considered a weakness by our military doctrines, a liability in expansion. But I watched this human run into fire without hesitation, not for glory, not for reward, simply because someone needed help." The Chancellor stood, and his entire entourage stood with him in perfect synchronization. For 10,000 years, the Zerathi Empire has measured strength by conquest, wisdom by technology, worth by power. Today we learned that we know nothing. The next week, something unprecedented occurred across the galaxy. The Zerathi High Council convened, not in their crystalline capital world, but in Geneva, on Earth. Every major empire delegation attended. The Zintians, the Morathi Collective, the infinite hive species that had watched humanity's clumsy emergence into galactic civilization with varying degrees of amusement or contempt. The High Chancellor addressed them all, with Daisy standing at his side and William still bandaged brought forward at her insistence. "We came to the stars through strength," the Chancellor declared. His voice transmitted across 100 worlds. "We built our empire on the principle that the strong survive and the weak perish. We have conquered, we have prevailed, we have endured, but we have never understood what this human showed us, that true strength lies not in domination, but in sacrifice. Not in taking, but in giving." He turned to William. "This man had every reason to ignore my daughter's cries. She was alien, unknown. Her people had nothing to offer him. The danger was real, the cost severe, yet he ran toward the fire, not away from it. He destroyed his hands to save a life he'd never met. This is not weakness. This is the most powerful force we have ever encountered. The council chamber fell silent. Species that had warred for millennia, that had built civilizations on hierarchies of power and survival of the fittest, watched as the greatest empire in known space knelt before a simple farmer from a simple world. Humanity, the Chancellor continued, possesses something our technologies cannot replicate, our philosophies cannot explain, our military might cannot defeat. They possess an instinct that defies logic to help, even at personal cost, to save, even strangers, to choose compassion, even in the face of danger. Daisy stepped forward. My father speaks for our empire, but I speak from experience. When I was dying, surrounded by fire, it wasn't our advanced shields that saved me. It wasn't our superior technology. It was a human's choice to see me not as alien, but as someone worth saving. The Chancellor raised his hand in the Zerathi gesture of ultimate respect. Therefore, the Zerathi Empire proposes a new galactic principle, that humanity be recognized not as a minor species on a backwater world, but as teachers of a truth we have all forgotten, that their world be granted protected status, their culture preserved and honored, their philosophy studied by all who seek true wisdom. One by one, the delegates stood. The Zynthians, whose crystalline forms refracted the light in agreement, the Morathi, whose collective consciousness rippled with understanding, even the infinite hive, who had never acknowledged another species as equal, lowered their carapatched heads in respect. William, overwhelmed and uncomfortable with the attention, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. I just did what anyone would do. No, Daisy said softly, touching his bandaged hand gently. You did what humans do, and today the galaxy learned why that matters more than all our empires combined. As the delegates filed out to spread word across their worlds, the Chancellor remained behind. He looked at William with something that might have been the Zerathi equivalent of a smile. Your people will face challenges, he said. Politics, enemies, those who don't understand. But know this, the Zerathi Empire, and all who witness today, will remember. The species that ran into fire to save a stranger is a species worth protecting, worth learning from, worth standing beside. William nodded, still processing everything. Through the window he could see Earth Bellismore blue, unremarkable by galactic standards. But Daisy, standing beside him, saw something else. She saw a world where people didn't calculate the cost before helping, where compassion wasn't a strategy but an instinct, where a farmer would burn his hands to save a stranger's daughter simply because it was right. Thank you, she whispered. And across 1,000 worlds, an empire that had never knelt began to learn the meaning of humanity. End.